Okay, so, we don't get into a lot of the award stuff with you. It might be different. Maybe some of the personal stuff. You've got so much to cover, but I will want to talk to you a little bit about the. Okay. You can't hear me when I'm whispering? Well, that's what I'm trying to tell him.
With friends like him, you don't need enemies, believe me.
Oh, we're rolling. Good evening, I'm Clint Black. Welcome to the show. Tonight I am whispering in circles with Bill Anderson. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you, my friend.
We've got so much to cover with you because you have a body of work that spans, well, let's just say you've had a song on the music charts in every one of the last 7 decades. It's amazing. Maybe 2 people could say that, maybe. You and Moses. That's it.
That's what Brad Paisley calls me. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
He calls me Moses. We were out at his house one night, me and John Randall and Brad, and they're sitting there. You know how they're so geared into all the latest technology. You know, Brad's got foot pedals and pedals on his guitars and all this stuff, and John Randall's the same, and they're writing on their computers. And I'm sitting over in the corner with a legal pad and a number 2 pencil.
Not a tablet that you're chiseling on.
No, don't give away the punchline. So I was sitting there writing with my pencil on my piece of paper, and Brad looks over at me and he says, "Hey, Moses, when did you quit writing with a chisel?" I told him, I said, "This pencil has never crashed." And about 3 days later, he called me up. He said, "You got the lyric on that song we wrote the other night?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "My computer crashed." I said, "My pencil didn't."
That's right. It still works. Yeah, I still write on paper. I'll keep the computer there. I'll type it out and have it down, but there's nothing like writing on paper.
Well, there's several real advantages to it, aside from the fact that it doesn't crash. When you get it written, if it ever amounts to anything, nobody wants to put a computer copy of it on the wall and hang it in a museum. But if you've written it by hand, they say, "Hey, give me that handwritten lyric,"
That's right.
you know. So that's one of the advantages. And then the fact that, for every pencil I use, I wear out about 6 erasers. So I'm always going through and, changing stuff as we go.
Yeah.
I'm not totally computer illiterate. I go home and save it and all on my computer. But I don't feel like I'm writing a song if I'm not writing a song.
Yeah. So when you came to Nashville, what year was that?
1840 something. Right?
So how did y'all record back before electricity? That's the question.
We didn't record. We couldn't. No. I came here to stay in 1960. I came here and did a few little things in the late 50s, but I packed up all my bags and said, "Okay, here we go. I'm going to go there and either make it or break it or whatever," in January of 1960. So it's been a few years.
So when you first got here, did you have a place to live? Did you have somebody's couch to flop on? Did you have some savings, able to rent a place?
I had written a song that had done fairly well called "City Lights" that Ray Price had recorded in the late 50s.
That already happened, yeah.
And I had a little bit of money. I didn't have a lot, but I had enough to rent me a place. It was $55 a month. I remember that. That included everything. It was what they called, in the old days, they called it a carriage house. It wasn't anything but a shack out back of some guy's house over in Hillsboro Village. And it had, everything that I needed, just had a place to lie down.
It would have been like a garage, right?
Well, sort of, yeah.
Garage
just
apartment?
like a little cabin, and lived there. And me and Roger Miller hung out over there and talked about, well, maybe someday we can make it in this business, and maybe someday we will.
I was wondering, because you and I never talked about this, who all you were hanging out with. And Roger Miller famously never, I think with one exception, never co-wrote. And one of his dear friends was my manager, Stan Moress, who used to try to get him to co-write with people. And finally, Roger said, "Did Picasso co-paint?"
Great line.
Leave me
I
alone.
did co-write with him, though.
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
know if I'm the only one that did, but he and I co-wrote a song riding from Nashville to San Antonio, Texas, in the back of his Rambler station wagon back in 1960, maybe early 1961. And he recorded the song, and a bunch of people have recorded it since, including Jim Reeves recorded it, and Jerry Lee Lewis, and a whole bunch of people.
Two Worlds.
And most recently, Jeannie Seeley and I did a duet on it on her album. It's called When Two Worlds Collide.
Yeah, huge.
Roger never called that song When Two Worlds Collide. You know what he called it? Clyde. Let's sing that song by Clyde. He was one of a kind. He was my closest buddy when I came here. He was my running buddy. I had met him in Atlanta. He was in the Army, and I was working as a disc jockey on a little radio station a few miles up the road. And every time they'd bring a country music show to Atlanta or anywhere close by, me and Roger Miller were the two kids that were haunting the backstage, trying to get backstage passes and trying to get glimpses of the stars and talking about our dreams and the days we wanted to come to Nashville. We made a pact with each other. He was about 19, and I was about 17. We both wanted to come to Nashville, and we said to each other, whichever one of us gets there first will help the other one. He got here first, and he helped me more than I could ever tell you.
That's great.
Can I tell you the greatest Bill Anderson, Roger Miller story? Roger called me late one afternoon. I'm over in my little cabin where I'm living. And he says, "What are you doing?" And I said, well, it was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, 6 maybe. I said, "I'm getting ready to take a load of clothes to the wishy-washy." He said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, I got a whole bag full of dirty clothes." He said, "Hang on, can you wait a few minutes?" He lived on the other side of town. He said, "I got some dirty clothes too. I'll come over there. I'll bring my clothes and I'll come over to your house. We'll go to the wishy-washy together." So I waited on him. Sure enough, he came over. He had a little tiny Fiat automobile. I don't think it had but 3 wheels on it, like one in the front and 2 in the back. He said, "How much does it cost to wash clothes at the wishy-washy?" I said, "Well, I think it's about $1 to wash, and maybe you put in a couple of dimes to dry it, maybe a little bit more." He said, You mean we might spend as much as $1 washing our clothes?" And I said, "Yeah, it's about what it takes." He said, "What do you do when you don't go to the wishy-washy? How do you get your clothes clean?" I said, "Well, I'd go down to Atlanta where my mom and dad still lived." And I said, "Mom will wash my clothes. I go down there, every 3 or 4 weeks." He said, "How far is it to Atlanta?" I said, "About 250 miles. He said, "They're having a gas war at the station out on Murfreesboro Road. We can buy gas for 17 cents a gallon." He said, "Let's go fill up and go down and get your mama to wash our clothes." We got in that little car after dark, filled it up with a bunch of gas as it held. There was no interstate. We got on old Highway 41, went over Mont Eagle. We got to my mama's house about 6 o'clock in the morning. And you should have seen, they didn't know we were coming. We hadn't told them we were coming. Mama comes to the door. She knew Roger. She and my dad had met him, before we all came to town. And she came to the door, and there we stood with 2 big old bags of clothes. She said, "What are you doing?" I said, "We came down to get you to wash our clothes." And bless her heart, you know what she did? She took Roger's big sack of clothes. She took my big sack of clothes, and she cooked us breakfast first. Then she took them downstairs to her laundry room down there. She washed all of Roger's clothes, all of my clothes, ironed them, folded them. We went back into what used to be my bedroom, had 2 twin beds. We fell across the beds and went to sleep. We woke up about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. She made us dinner, put our clothes in the car, and we headed back to Nashville. That's the good old days, folks.
So I want to just mention some of the names that you have touched and lives you've impacted with your songs. Ray Price, Porter Wagner, Connie Smith, Conway Twitty, James Brown, Aretha Franklin, Dean Martin, Alison Krauss, George Strait, Kenny Chesney, Brad Paisley. I'm not imagining you're up in Musicville, USA, up in Motown, pitching songs. How did Aretha Franklin get one of your songs?
I don't know. And I don't really know how James Brown did, but I sure am glad they did. James Brown recorded his own version of my song, Still. He took it and made it his, which a great artist does. He didn't do it a thing like I wrote it, but he did it like James Brown, and that was good enough for me. And Aretha Franklin recorded a song that I wrote that Conway had a #1 record on called I May Never Get to Heaven. And boy, she wore it out. I'm so proud of those records. But I'm proud of the Porter Wagner records and the Connie Smith records and the Ray Price records, right along with all of them.
It doesn't happen to me much. I don't pitch my songs, but I've had a couple of them where someone grabbed it and re-recorded it. And it's thrilling to hear it done in a different way.
Yeah.
And so you've had that experience again and again and again, and I know it doesn't get old.
No, it doesn't, because it's one of the greatest compliments you can be paid, really, for somebody to take your song and make it their own, make it where it fits them. They're not trying to do it the way that I did it or somebody else did it. Anybody can trace a picture. It takes a great artist to paint one. And James Brown painted a picture when he recorded Still, and Aretha Franklin painted a picture when she recorded I May Never Get to Heaven. Totally different from any picture that I would have imagined.
Yeah. Just hearing these great voices, I think about, you wrote with Jamie Johnson.
Oh, yeah, every chance I get.
Yeah, and the song, I don't even want to say the title because it'll get stuck in my head and I'll never get it out. It's one of those great George Strait songs. Did you write it with him in mind? Did he just happen onto it?
Well, let me throw one other name in there, because it wasn't just me and Jamie Johnson. It was with Buddy Cannon, too. There were 3 of us that wrote it. No, I don't think when we started writing the song that we had anybody in mind, really. We just kind of took off on it. We were together and trying to come up with an idea. And Jamie said, I'm going through a divorce. And I said, well, anybody that's going through a divorce can't write a country song, needs to turn his guitar in. So Jamie picked up his guitar, and we started with the, she was storming through the house that day, and I could tell she was leaving, and she's trying to give away everything, and it just kind of happened. But when we finished it, and Jamie cut a little work tape on it, a little demo thing, it just had George Strait written all over it, and we were just hoping that George would like it, and he did, and recorded it, and became the #1 song of 2007.
That's big. It was a #1 in 2007. It was the #1 song of 2007.
Yeah, of 2007. It was #1 in 2006.
It's such an accomplishment to have a hit song in a given week. There's 52 of them, so there's going to be, unless one sticks up there for a while, there's going to be 52 #1 songs that are competing for the #1 song of the year. And that's a big thing.
It is, and I've been very blessed. I've had 2 since the 2000s when Brad Paisley and Alison Krauss did Whiskey Lullaby, which I wrote with John Randall.
There's one story I've never heard you tell about the guitar song you wrote with Jamie Johnson.
With Jamie, about the guitar hanging in the pawn shop?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a great story. I want you to tell it because I know something about it. Just an unbelievable happenstance.
Yeah, it really was. Jamie had the idea to write the guitar song, and he recorded it first. It's been recorded a few times since. And the story of the song, if you're not familiar with it, is that 2 guitars are hanging in this pawn shop, and basically they're having a conversation. They're talking to each other about the good old days when they used to be in the spotlight, and people used to come from miles around to hear them play and all that kind of thing. It's kind of a totally fantasy type thing. But the strange thing about it is, you talk about life imitating art. That song had been out a couple of years, and I got a phone call one day from a guy who said he ran a pawn shop in Phoenix, Arizona. And he said, I got something you might be interested in. And I said, what? He said, did you ever own a Grammer guitar? One's made by Billy Grammer, who, of course, was an artist on the Grand Ole Opry. And I said, yes, Billy gave me a Grammer guitar back many years ago. I said, I don't know whatever happened to it. And he said, well, I think I do. He said, I think it's here in my pawn shop. He had gotten that guitar, and he got to studying the guitar, and he got to looking at it, and he looked down in the hole there, and there was a little label down there against the back board that said this guitar was made personally for Bill Anderson Grand Ole Opry, and it had the year on there. And he said, I don't know how it got out here. I said, well, I don't know either. I got no idea. And I thought, okay, here comes the sales pitch. Here comes, I'll let you have it for $30,000 or something, you know. And doggone, if he wasn't the nicest guy in the world, I said, what would you take? I'd love to have the guitar back. And I'm just waiting to hear this astronomical figure. He said, you know, my wife and I have always wanted to come to the Grand Ole Opry. He said, our anniversary is in just a few weeks. He said, if you could arrange for us to come to the Grand Ole Opry, we'll bring you the guitar when we come. Yeah. I almost can't tell the story now. And he walked in backstage that night, the guitar, he'd put it in a case. He didn't have a case. He put it in one and brought it to me. And I looked at it and I said, where have you been all these years? We're talking like nearly 50 years.
Yeah.
It's been a long time. But he walked out on that stage. I told the story to the audience. And he and his wife walked out on that stage holding that guitar. The spotlight hit it. I can't hardly even talk about it.
Let me guess, it's not about the guitar, it's about the kindness of that man.
Totally.
Yeah.
It renewed my faith in humanity. Yeah. And I had told Jamie Johnson that was going to happen. So the first song, he gave me the guitar. I put a strap on it and put it around. And the first song we played was the guitar song.
Yeah.
Me and Jamie. Yeah.
That's
very special.
What year did you write your book, Unprecedented Life?
It came out in 2016.
So this is a look, not at your entire career, but at the resurgence of your career. If I'm telling it right, you talk about just feeling like, okay, that was a great career, but now, you know, that's about it. And there's Steve and Vince, I believe you credit with just kind of kicking the door in and going, get out here, Bill, and, you know, you're not done. There's a funny story with Vince.
Well, see, I had done very little co-writing in my time. What happened was I wrote a lot of songs by myself from the late 50s into the late 70s and early 80s, and the music started changing a little bit, and I said, I don't know if I can change with it, so I took off and started doing game shows and soap operas on television and other things, and I didn't write hardly any songs for about 10 years. I really didn't. And this girl who used to cut my hair cut Vince Gill's hair, and she used to tell me, you need to meet Vince Gill, and y'all need to write a song together. I said, Vince Gill doesn't know who I am. I'm just an old dinosaur to him, you know. She said, no, call him. You need to call him, and y'all need to write together. Well, before I actually got up the nerve to do that, Steve had a #1 hit with Tips of My Fingers. And all of a sudden, I thought, wait a minute, that's a song I wrote 32 years ago. I wrote it in 1960, and Steve had it #1 in 92. And I thought, well, maybe I do still have something to contribute. So maybe I should try this co-writing thing. So she gave me Vince Gill's phone number. I carried it around with me for months. I was intimidated. I didn't want to call him. Finally, one day, I said, heck, I'm just going to call him. He may not know who I am, but I'll just introduce myself. So I dial the number. I get his voicemail. It says, hi, this is Whispering Gill. I said, not only does he know who I am, he's stealing my act. So we connected. I left a message. And asked him to call me, and he called me back, and we got together one day. I had 2 song ideas I wanted to run by him. And I ran the first one by him, and we wrote it. And he said, that was so much fun, let's do it again. So we got together a few days later and wrote the other one. He's ended up recording both of them, and one of them was a #1 record called Which Bridge to Cross, Which Bridge to Burn. And that kind of rejuvenated and restarted my songwriting career and took it down a path that I never dreamed it was going to go.
So I have one more question. When you get to heaven, if you could sing a song with anyone who is already there, who would it be and what song would you sing?
Hank Williams was my idol growing up. The records he made, the songs he wrote, the narrations he did, everything that he did in his career greatly influenced me. I think I would try to find old Hank up there somewhere and ask him to let me sing a chorus of I Saw the Light with him.
Good
I
choice.
think that's what I'd love to do. Yeah. I hope I get to.
Yeah. Well, let's hope it's a long time from now, because we love you.
Well, I hope
We
it's a
love having
long
you
time
here.
from now, but
Thanks.
we have no guarantees.
That's right. Well, thank you for being here, Bill.
Thank you for having me.
Good to see you. Bill
Appreciate it
Anderson.
very much. Thank you.